Okay, buckle up. This is going to be one of those programs at the public square. There's just so much to talk about, and we need to get after it today. I'm Wayne Shepherd with Dave Zanotti. Here's who else is here today. Alan C. Duncan, our producer. Rob Walgett is here, and Melanie Elsey is here. And Dave, are we looking forward to this conversation? Is this one of those we have to have?
We're breaking a lot of rules today, Wayne, but we feel the necessity to do so. First off, I want to thank our team at the public square. I get to carry the title of the CEO of the Public Square Media Network. The people that we have that put this outreach to America together are doing a tremendous job. And I really have a fondness and an appreciation and a great amount of respect for the quality of the programming that's been coming out this year. I don't know if we've hit a new gear, or maybe God's trying to help us more, or maybe we're listening to him more closely. But there's just been a sense of grace and lightness and power and transparency in these conversations. I mean, you think we sit in the studio, we do these things together, and then they post and we hear them back a few days later. A lot of times I can't remember what we talked about when I go to the phone app and I plug mine in and I listen to the broadcast. But I can tell you with absolute certainty, I don't feel like I'm listening to myself. I feel like I'm listening to this family conversation that takes on a life that's bigger than where it started. I mean, you've been a pro in radio your whole life, Wayne. What are you picking up?
I think that explains it well. It's like an out-of-body listening experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and the feedback we're getting from people is quite remarkable. Now, I mean, we just had a conversation. We prayed about this morning. My ego is such that I would love to be able to tout monstrous numbers in the millions of listeners on a broadcast like this. I would just love to, and especially when you consider all the different types of ways that our program goes out. It's actually a little difficult to calculate because we have a 2-minute program on so many shows. We've got daily 30-minute broadcasts in key markets around the country. We've got the weekend programs that go out over 238 shows. Then you've got the whole world of the phone app and what people now call podcasting, which I'm now allowed to say. I've been granted absolution to say that on the air.
Welcome.
We do a broadcast, and it ends up in the world of podcasting. And so
you have CEO immunity.
Yes, I have CEO immunity, which see future conversation. All right, and the point is that we really sincerely don't know how many people actually finally hear this broadcast. We hope it's millions. We're certainly putting the effort in for that, but it may be thousands. We don't know. The point is it's not just about the numbers. We don't brag the numbers.
Thank you for saying that.
We just don't do it. We feel like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and the way that we know it is the feedback. And the feedback, the letters that people send us are remarkable. We have letters from people in multiple prisons across the United States who have networks of fellow inmates that are listening to these programs on a weekly basis and feel they're being discipled in their growth in Christ and in their understanding of America and what they can do to become good citizens.
That's terrific. Wow.
And we have pastors, and we have business people, and we have academics. I mean, you take moms and dads, you have the whole spectrum. So what we're doing is we're kind of going to run right up into the 4th of July weekend with this program. And years later, when this program is replayed, we took a chance here. A lot of people stop listening to long format audio products or any products at all over the whole 4th of July thing because they're busy doing other stuff. And we say, God bless you. Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and whatever. Subarus, was it? I don't know what it was. Whatever that other thing is.
No, it's not Subarus.
It's Chevrolets. Okay. The whole 4th of July thing is a great time to celebrate. Yeah. It goes back to the letters that John Adams wrote to Abigail Adams about the kind of celebrations we ought to have for the wonder of the Declaration of Independence. We've got a whole program planned on that, but we're not going to run it on 4th of July weekend because the news has been demanding. Not since COVID broke have we had a week of such dominant news where everyone is talking and asking us the same kinds of questions. First about the debates and now about the Supreme Court decision on immunity. So the presidential election has now taken over the mindset. The 4th of July conversations are all going to be about this. And so we've decided to do a couple things. First off, we've got 3 broadcasts up on 1850 Main Street. All you have to do is plug in 1850 Main Street, look for it on your search engine. You'll come up with the website. You've got all access to it. You can download it wherever you get podcasts from. And those 3 shows were happening instantly as the news was breaking. So we've got 3 fast responses on 1850. But today we're going to take a little longer look, and we're going to get into more of how these 2 things all fit together and have a conversation, again, completely unscripted. So let's go back. And I haven't had a chance to ask anybody in this room. Well, no, Rob and Alan and I did the 1850 show, so we talked, but we haven't had Melanie's take on the debates. And Wayne, we haven't had your take on the debates. So here we go. Let's roll back a few days. First off, I got to ask you out loud, did you dare watch it? You did.
Oh, I did.
Okay. Wayne?
I did not.
Okay. Have you yet seen the transcript?
I purposefully did not watch it.
Okay. Now, that's important. So tell me why.
I have been so disheartened by this whole campaign on both sides that I knew, given the personalities involved, that there was just not going to be anything new come out of this that would be helpful. I just chose, and I knew that there would be so much analysis afterwards that I couldn't escape, that I didn't need to spend time watching it. So if that makes me a bad guy, it makes me a bad guy, but that's what happened.
Well, hey, but those are fighting words. Anybody's going to call Wayne Shepard a bad guy is the equivalent of picking on St. Nicholas's little brother. That is not going to cut it here on the public square.
Oh, there'll be somebody.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Wayne's in good company.
Yes, he is.
Dr. W.B. Allen, who people, if you're familiar with the public square as a broadcast, wrote to us and informed us that he, in fact, as well, did not watch this particular debate by choice.
Yeah, by choice. He couldn't endure it. In fact, only 51 million people watched this debate, according to the way that the ratings have been registered. That's down a good 20 million from the last time that these 2 candidates debated. So that tells you that a lot of people joined that. And I would venture to say that there's 51 million reasons why, but I'm sure that some of the reasons Dr. Allen expressed to us and some of the reasons, Wayne, you've expressed as well. And I think it's a perfect place to start as to why people didn't watch.
Well, I did watch because we were going to talk about it on 1850. However, I think part of the reason people didn't watch is because they lived through a Donald Trump presidency and they're living in a Joe Biden presidency. So what are we debating? You can look at what people did in real life.
Can we talk about why we did watch it?
Hang on 1 second before we go there. I also think that the diminishment of the presidential debate interest is a direct result of the fact that for decades now, we have lived under the bondage of the Presidential Debate Commission, which is an organization that came together with a bunch of industry lobbyists, consultants, and bigwigs who assumed authority as if they somehow had been written into the Constitution or the United States Code, and it was really just pure politics, where they coordinated their way with the major political parties and the big donors, and they had set the rules for years. And the presidential debates, I'm telling you, it is easier to get a root canal than to watch the stuff that we've seen over the years. It is less painful. All right. Yeah. And if anybody's had a root canal lately, you know that's not the easiest thing to do in life. The presidential debates were far worse. They were just, it's 90 minutes of fingernails on the chalkboard. All right. It's just bad. And it's structurally bad. And it was stupid beyond imagination. And this one, both campaigns broke away. This was a rebel moment. They broke away and they set up their own system. They did it with CNN. They worked the rules out between the campaigns. And from a process perspective, it was the best debate we've had in forever because the candidates, about 30% of the time, didn't even hit their 2-minute mark. They were so sensitive of being succinct and getting it done, or they had other issues, all right? But there was time left. And it was the process was actually worth experiencing.
I feel like that was probably the first time either of them have had a debate where they didn't have to fight for time talking over their opponent.
Yes.
Because the opponent's mic was cut.
Yes.
So they didn't have to spend their time responding directly. And that was probably a bit of a shock. Think how many debates they've done over the past.
So from a process perspective, it was much better than what we've seen in the past. Now, that's where it ends, okay? All right, because then what happened was as unique as anything. If you haven't seen it, it's worth seeing. I think it's easier to view than it would be to listen to. And it's not always that way. I remember the Gore-Bush debate was much easier to listen to than it was to watch. I think this particular debate would be easier to watch than to listen to.
Well, and you're going to miss a lot of the context clues if you don't watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Specifically.
Yes.
Looking at Joe Biden's facial expression.
Because one of the things, Wayne, that they did is they did a split screen, a headshot, shoulder headshots of both candidates the whole time.
Okay.
And so you were always able to watch them both in real time.
I want to go back on the muted microphone, though. That technique did work.
It worked.
Yes.
It worked. It was amazing. I mean,
And I know, the Biden campaign advocated for that. And in hindsight, that could be something that cost them because it did force Donald Trump not to talk as much and try and talk over President Biden. He was quiet.
Oops.
And that's not normally his thing. And I think it would have been better for the Biden campaign had he looked more aggressive.
Well, to be honest, I started it thinking I'm going to give it a try and I'm going to quit. If it's as annoying as previous debates, I'm not going to stay till the end. But for all the reasons you just described, I watched it and stayed with it because the process was different, because it felt different, because of the split screen, because I could see all of that was what made me stay with it because it was just interesting.
Let's take a break. We've got a lot more to talk about on the Public Square today, just getting started here. Dave mentioned 1850. It's a podcast that's available. As he said, you can search any podcast app or online to find it. This is, though, the Public Square, and we'll continue in a moment.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square.
Have you heard Kids on the Square's newest episode, Summer Book Club?
No homework! Will we still have summer reading? What? Yeah, but that's part of the magic of summer. Nothing beats swaying in a hammock and reading a great book on a long summer day.
I don't know. All the summer reading for school is boring.
Join us for discoveries.
This story takes place in Illinois a really long time ago, back in 1832.
With all those books, who knows? You could start a library for this town. I'm sure the kids would love it.
A special interview with author Sherry Eisen.
Well, yes, I do spend a lot of time walking in the forest. That combined with love of animals and just God's creation, it is a peaceful place to be and very inspiring.
And plenty of laughs.
Could I use your well out in the back to give my lizard a drink?
Oh, where did that even come from?
Alex, I told you to keep your lizard in his jar.
Kids on the Square aims to bless, encourage, and educate the next generation of American children by creating resources for families to connect and communicate in this digital era. So what are you waiting for? Grab a friend, share this episode with your family, and join us today at Kids on the Square.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Right back at it on the Public Square today as we talk about, first of all, the debate here. Melanie, you were commenting about sticking with it the whole time.
I had a different expectation as I came into it because I thought the different format would actually be worse. But I thought, no, I'm going to give it a try because I thought CNN would really manipulate their end of the process more than they did. And if it gets too frustrating, I'll shut it off. But it didn't get too frustrating. And some said it was unfair that they had a split screen because it took the focus off of what was being said to watching the other person on the split screen. I thought the split screen was very educational.
Yeah.
Because it helped me to see President Biden's response to former President Trump and vice versa. And it just was very interesting to me.
There's so many things to talk about, and we haven't had a chance to do this. Melanie, I want to keep going with you, though, because we haven't heard your opinion. So just more reflections.
Well, I was not watching it with social media in my hand at the same time. I was just watching the debate. I wasn't watching it because I don't have a Twitter account, or I'm not on Facebook and all of that. So I didn't have the advantage to all of the responses that I saw later. For example, it really irritated me when President Biden said that the Border Patrol endorses his campaign. They endorse me. They endorse my policies. So I wasn't aware of the fact that the Border Patrol immediately posted on X. That's not true, and it never would be true. So without having all of the extra commenting from the public or from those kinds of entities, I was just frustrated that former President Trump didn't challenge the dishonest answers coming from President Biden more forcefully.
You know, in talking of the rules of the debate, I wondered how President Trump would handle it they were in essence in an empty room. And he is a showman. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, that may hurt him. Let's see how. I think it helped him.
I agree.
I think because he was willing, he toned it down to what he normally does. So I think all of the rules that the Biden campaign was adamant about came back to hurt President Biden's performance, and it also kept the reins on President Trump from going over the top, at least if you're comparing it to previous performances and what you would expect from him.
But don't you think he came into that also with determination to let President Biden talk more and more?
Well, he had no choice because his mic was muted.
No, I mean, even in the context of his responses, I think President Trump's responses were somewhat muted.
Literally.
No. In his time that he was allowed to speak, when he was not mic muted, his tone was toned down.
And I think President Trump missed some opportunities in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just the very language that we're using right now. I think it would be helpful to set this in the context of history. We've never had a televised debate with two people bearing the title president running for a term against each other. This has never happened before. So this is significant. We watched something that's never happened before in the history of American politics. Now you say, well, only 51 million people watched. Listen, I'm impressed that many people watched. Because part of the challenge that we have in this particular presidential election, and it's not orchestrated, it simply is reality, is that people know their names. You know, Donald Trump and Joe Biden have 100% name identification. Doesn't happen that way very often. All right, if I ask you the name of some of the people that are currently being discussed as vice presidential candidates, that's going to be a pretty big deal, right? If I asked you the guy out in what state is he in? The Burgum guy?
The Dakotas.
One of those Dakotas, yeah.
One of them.
One of those Dakotas. See my point?
One that's not Kristi Noem's.
Here's
that's how he's identified.
Okay. So if we take Kristi Noem or Governor Burgum or some of these names that are out there, you're going to find the drop-off in name identification. Even Kamala Harris, the drop-off in name identification is significant. You're pegging the fun meter at 100% when you're talking Biden-Trump. That means people aren't going to spend their time on something they already think they understand. There's
no mystery.
Nothing new here. Yeah, no mystery. So then you have the Trapeze Act going on. And so you'd watch it to see, is something really interesting going to happen, like someone going to fall off the trapeze without a net, or the High Wire Act. Okay, then then you've got the whole hockey crowd saying, is this going to break out into a real fist fight?
Well, the NASCAR you're watching to see, is there going to be
Boom.
a crash?
There's the NASCAR crowd comes in, waiting for a 200-mile-an-hour wreck.
I always say, though, you watch NASCAR on television, you say, you looking for the crash. When you go to a NASCAR race in person, you're like, I sure hope no
they
one
don't
crashes
crash.
because I don't know anyone to survive it.
Yeah.
So, did someone fall off of a tightrope?
Well, let's.
Do we not want to jump there?
Oh no! It's fair. I mean, I almost feel like we need to take a minute and let everyone listening respond to their listening device to that question. If you watched,
talk amongst yourselves.
Talk amongst yourselves for a minute, all right? Because I will tell you that the first two things hit me right from the, and I was channel surfing, so I wanted to be careful that I got the actual moment when they walked in, and because I knew that Fox and CNN were playing competitive games on how they were going to both cover the same thing, even though it was somebody else's property. I went to CNN because I didn't want to miss anything. If they were, I wanted to get as close to the ground as I could on this. So the first thing that I got in watching these two candidates, both bearing the title president, understand one's former president pursuing the job, and the other is the current president. That's never happened before. So the historic import of that was significant. So out they come, and nobody shakes hands.
It's the first thing that my wife said to me. She was like, oh, I can't, because President Biden came out first, and then President Trump came out second. And she was like, oh, they didn't go over and shake anyone's hand. And I believe, did a coin flip decide who was going to come out first?
Don't know.
Which, don't they know? Coin flips are out. When you want to decide something first, it's like in youth sports. You play paper, rock, scissors. That's how you decide it. It's not coin flips anymore. Coin flips are past that.
So no one shook hands. And that was the first, to me, that was the first moment of the train wreck. Because if you consider that, and we could talk probably the rest of the broadcast about just the consideration of what happens when two people bearing that name are about to have a conversation in front of a watching nation regarding the policies and interests of our shared community called America. And they are unable to shake each other's hand in a historic moment like that. That's very stark. Now, that was the first thing that I watched. It was as if Donald Trump was in slow motion. If you actually go back and watch the tape, what you'll see is he walks out, he stands at the podium, he takes a deep breath and sort of fixes his posture as tall as he can, exhales, grabs the podium, and doesn't move. And I can't help but to wonder in his mind, did he think, should I or shouldn't I? Or I'm not going to, and it's against my very instincts, but I'm not going to. Or did he walk out thinking, this is the no good, dirty, rotten so-and-so that has put my family through all of this prosecution.
You wonder if a handshake would have seemed disingenuous.
Of millions, right, right. And there's no way of knowing what through their mind. Someday they'll write their memoirs and we'll find out. Right? But that was the first thing. Then it got worse because the President of the United States was given the first question, as I remember. And within 30 seconds, I said out loud, I looked away and I said, oh, dear God, no. Because it was obvious that Joe Biden was not there. He was desperately struggling in the first 90 seconds.
Wow.
And I thought, oh no. This is like it or not, love him or hate him. This is the President of the United States.
Well, what's serious about that point is that it's not just the millions of Americans that were watching, but it was the leaders around the world who were also watching.
I was thinking the same thing, Melanie, right?
Yeah.
And you know what else? I'm thinking about every pirate-based hacking organization that's trying to tear up our economy and pillage innocent people in this country, wondering how tough the barriers of access are to take on America.
Well, yeah. But we talk about the tightrope and the high wire and the fact that I think we've seen Joe Biden attempt that over the past 6 months, over the past year, and fall many, many times. So the fact that some are acting like it came as such a big surprise, is that being genuine? And are they as surprised as they're acting?
Obviously, we're going to talk more about this on the Public Square today. If you joined us late and want to go back to the beginning, you can do that with our free smartphone app, where you can listen to this program anytime and all of our programs from the American Policy Roundtable, or you can listen online at thepublicsquare.com.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Back to our conversation regarding the presidential debate, which took place recently. I'm Wayne Shepherd with Dave Zanotti. At the table today, Alan C. Duncan, our producer. Melanie Elsey is here, and Rob Walgate as well. Dave?
So the debate went forward, and it was awkward. Everyone now has been hearing all the reports. I have to give the two CNN moderators, who's I know their names, but to me, I'm not even going to mention them. And the reason I'm not going to mention them is because they succeeded in making themselves mostly irrelevant, which is exactly what a good moderator should do.
Kudos to them. I will say that as well. They stayed. I felt like they did a good job at staying out of the way. They didn't want to be the story. So kudos.
Good for them. They took the risk, they took the responsibility, and they didn't completely mess it up. Now, I can talk about some of the questions, but no, compared to what we've had, it was so much better. But the point is, they did have the opportunity. They could have, particularly in the breaks, they could have played the fact check game. They could have got into the fact-checking thing, which has been so dominant in recent debates, where the reporters interject themselves into the story and start challenging the candidates on, you said this, but this is this. They didn't do that. Thank God.
And what happened from that is you didn't have the level, you had some tension back and forth between the candidates and the moderators, but it wasn't the argumentative conversations where it became a debate between the moderator and a candidate on either side. Yeah. That part was appreciated.
So then what happened? Well, it was way too long, as they always are. They should have stopped it at an hour. The questions were interesting. There were answers, but what ended up happening was it didn't take very long for the two people bearing the title of president to turn the debate into something that I would have to say was about the level of a junior high school fight in the cafeteria. They kind of started a food fight, then they started throwing chairs, but most importantly, they were basically acting very unpresidential, both of them. They were name-calling. They were setting up their playbook. They were executing their plays. It was almost a call and response, and it just got to the condescension of where we were looking more like something that came out of the World Wrestling Federation. It was embarrassing. It was sad. It was completely unnecessary, because these two people have earned the right to be on that stage. These are two people who bear the title president. There's not a lot of them in all the years, the centuries America's been around. They're not dumb people. They've seen stuff none of us have seen. They've got stories we'd all love to hear. They've actually got things that they agree about that are good for our country. There's a lot of ways they could have gone, but it ended up getting very, very personal. Now, what surprised me was that while Joe Biden had a very difficult time assembling his thoughts on policy and on statistics, he seemed to have absolutely no problem calling Donald Trump names. Like the punchlines that were in the book, Biden was able to execute just fine. And that surprised me.
And he was intense in doing it.
Yeah. And he got inside Trump's head.
Yeah, it got personal quick. And that was the sad aspect of it. I agree.
Well, I think for both of these men, their personal lives have been so eviscerated by the other, one to the other, and back and forth, just in actions and words, more in actions in terms of what Trump has been going through, but in terms of words, I mean, Trump has not been a loss for words for the Biden family.
No, and what the nature of this campaign was defined in this debate, which is there's a group of people who actually believe that Donald Trump is, pick whatever nasty name and whatever language you want to put up, but he's as bad as a human can possibly be if he's barely human at all, and he will destroy everything that you love and hold dear. And therefore, no matter what happens, this man cannot be in the White House again. Nothing else matters.
In watching the aftermath, I'm sure it cuts both ways, works both ways, but I just wondered if Joe Biden's decision to stay in this race isn't personal, that he does want to beat Trump personally.
Well, thanks for turning
it may go the other way as well.
That's the right question. And it's really now the question that everybody is asking, because as you got to the end of the debate, Wayne, I don't know if you've picked it back up on the commentary side, but I will tell you that within seconds, of course, I stayed with CNN because now they're the hosting agency on this, and I was flipping back and forth to Fox. But you could get both sides right there. I mean, the spin rooms were right. All you needed was 2 channels. You could get the whole thing. And what was amazing was they all had their phones out. I mean, the panel at CNN, they all had their phones out, and they were all like, they were shaking and quaking. It was really pretty cool because they were trying to quantify the influx of data that was coming to them from insiders in the Democrat Party who were basically losing their minds, not because Joe Biden lost the debate to Donald Trump. They would never concede that Donald Trump won anything, but because Joe Biden performed so poorly that it looked like this thing should never have happened in the first place, and they were losing their minds.
And that's something that I've thought about and wondered if, the American public has not seen the HUR tapes from the investigation that was done over the documents. And,
HUR, the HUR tapes.
HUR, Inspector General HUR. And, they basically said we're not going to charge Joe Biden because he's a bit forgetful. He's an old man that meant well. I mean,
that was on the documents case.
That's basically what it said. But no one's seen the tapes of those interviews of how he was questioned. And I can only imagine how bad those must be if no one's had access. And again, that gets back to the point of how are they letting him continue to be the commander in chief and rolling him out there to do debates on national television if they know this has happened previously? This isn't a broken arm that gets better after 6 weeks.
Well, but hang on a second. I stuck with the story a little longer. So the next day at 2:00 in the afternoon, Joe Biden is in North Carolina. Now, and it's a very carefully orchestrated thing. Now, again, we do events, we do media. We're a media public policy corporation, so we've been doing this a long time. So we know camera angles. We know how to set up a room, how to design a room, and how to make a room look like there's thousands of people there when there's hundreds. And, of course, the Biden people did a really good job in this kind of closed-circuit environment. It was so well done. The camera angles were perfect. It looked like a huge crowd. No, it was like average, medium, small crowd. Okay. And so they're in North Carolina. And of course, they have all the people exactly slotted in the spots they want them in. It's completely, the flags, everything's perfect. Out comes Joe Biden. I'm going to tell you something. I watched the whole debate and I felt so sorry for this human being carrying the weight that he carried. Now, I mean, that may get me in trouble with some people who are so partisan and pro-Trump that we can't consider the humanity of the opponent. Look, these are 2 human beings just like all the rest of us. And you couldn't watch the debate without a sense of sorrow for a whole lot of reasons, but particularly because of the struggle that Joe Biden went through. The next day, I got to tell you, I'm sure most people didn't see this. I guarantee you there weren't 51 million people who watched the Biden event. He spoke, I think, for 20 minutes, almost on the number. He had multiple giant teleprompters up. He walks out with his wife, the first lady, who's wearing a black dress that has the words vote monogrammed into the fabric. I mean, it's like who designed this dress?
3-inch letters.
3-inch letters. So all you had was like 100 words vote. Everywhere she moved, it was vote, 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 vote. It was like, this is like something from the old Batman series. It was amazing. All right. So out they come. Joe Biden has got his shirt unbuttoned 3 down. His hair is perfect. He seemed to have gotten the best tan in the last 18 hours you could have imagined. He walks out, delivers this fiery speech for 20 minutes, and then walks off with Jill. And I'm saying to myself, what just happened?
Okay, we have to talk about that, but we also have to take a break. This is The Public Square. Online, thepublicsquare.com. Don't go anywhere. When we left our heroes a moment ago, we were asking the question, what just happened? And this is The Public Square. Let's pick up the story.
I hope there's a sense of shared affliction for everyone watching. And I sincerely don't care where you stand on this election, because we're all in this together. No matter how this thing ends up, there will be a president of the United States, and we'll have to deal with the consequences of that, however it works out. But this is a historic period of time. We've never had a race like this, but then it's amplified by we've never had a race like this.
Well, and after the debate, Joe Biden went to a watch party to get the crowd fired up, and he was attempting to quote John Wayne from a quote that Biden's brother always said. Number one, I don't believe it was from a John Wayne movie. It was a different Western movie. And number two, when they zoom in on Jill Biden in the back, when he starts telling this story, you just see sheer panic.
Really? I didn't see that clip.
On her face. You see her kind of like looking like, oh my goodness, where is he going? And you see, and to me, just like you said, feeling sorry for it, like it's to the point of like, if they love the man, they won't allow the man to do this. As an American, there should be 330 million concerned citizens that say, wait a minute, this is the commander in chief. This is who is making the decisions. What about the rest of us? When you see the internal memos that are floating around that say he's only active, the best time to talk to him is between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. or whatever the hours are. I mean, that should cause concern to all of us.
Well, but I think this debate and then the reaction to it by the mainstream media does cause at least me to think, and probably others, has Joe Biden been calling the shots at any point during this presidency? I don't know how you can't just at least ask the question.
And think about the context before the debate when the major media networks were saying, you are, what is the word for clipping a video? What were they calling it?
Deep fakes.
Yeah, they were saying they were editing things and doing things differently.
To make President Biden look as if he wasn't competent. But they couldn't do that when everything's live for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So is the shock that the mainstream media is now portraying, is that genuine shock? Or is this, did we get the scripts handed out?
I think it's theatrical shock.
It's the way it seems to me for some of this.
And conspiracies are apparent and flying. I mean, the one that I've heard most recently is this was set up by design to enable the Democrat Party to take Kamala Harris out of the vice presidency at the convention, that this was designed, knowing this was going to happen, that the way they worked their way out of this is to say, no, we'll keep Joe Biden at the top of the ticket because he beat Donald Trump from his basement last time. So we'll keep Joe there and keep Joe protected like we did from this point forward. But we're going to bring somebody in on the 2 spot that takes the question of what happens next off the table and flips the whole dynamic of the election with just 60 days to go, that's their next play.
Well, and that shows the Democrats do have a twofold problem. Is one, is the only person with a favorability rating across the country, as poor as President Biden right now, is the vice president, Kamala Harris. That's why they can't make a move right now. But two, the other problem is when it comes to the convention and who appears on ballots, state laws, different states have different laws through the primary process. So they will have an issue on laws they'll have to change or things they'll have to do from a convention perspective to manipulate and get the right names in the right order. I think they have work to do. It could be done, but it's not going to be easy.
And there's going to be an extraordinary effort in terms of Ohio laws because they're going to have to come out ahead of the convention with the ballot arrangement to get Joe on the Ohio ballot itself.
Yeah, they already had to pass a law to ensure.
They had to revise the law to do that.
Yes, to ensure that he would be able to make the ballot.
So there are real challenges here. And again, getting this close to an election and listening to a conversation like this, it is very difficult for people to, for a minute, just stop and think about the 30,000-foot view in regards to history, our country, the future, where we're going, because there's so much passion that's involved. Now, and the intensity of the passion is on both sides. I think that I've discerned a difference between the two sides, is that the anti-Trump passion that emanates from the Democrat Party is very personal. They just really, truly hate this guy. He's become a symbol for them. I do not get the passion the other way, that there's hatred for Joe Biden. That's difficult to muster. What there is a tremendous amount of fear regarding his policies, because there's a sense that A, he's not calling the shots, and B, if you look just right behind him, his former chief of staff, Ron Klain, was on the board of the Center for American Progress, and John Podesta, who is the founder of the Center for American Progress with George Soros, is still sitting in the White House writing checks to people. And so what we've got is a clear sense that the agenda of the Biden administration, should it have a second term, isn't going to change at all. If anything, it's going to be amplified whether Joe's around or not, because President Biden hasn't been calling the shots from the start. It was an arranged marriage from the get-go between the party and Joe Biden. And to their credit, we've got what the Bible says: give credit where credit's due. They beat Donald Trump in 2020 with Joe Biden in his basement. Now, we can argue about all the laws that changed in the election and COVID. All those points are worth discussing and worth reviewing, and we'll be looking at them from a historical perspective for 25 more years. But the bottom line was he won. He got a lot more votes than President Trump, and he got a lot more votes in the 5 states that he had to get them in. So, and now let's bring that all to the point. The point is this: 51 million people watched. Right now, we could probably have the election today, right now. And if we took a vote now and sealed it, and then voted on Election Day in November and sealed it, and then opened them both up, I doubt there'd be more than 1% or 2% change in the actual voting process. People have already made up their minds. They've seen these two folks in action.
That leads me to this question. Do you think that this debate will have anything to do with voter turnout?
Excellent question.
Possibly it could. I think the one thing that it could have a big impact on, though, and this could go to turnout as well, is the United States Senate races in key places around the country. I'm thinking of the Democrats that want to win re-election. I'm thinking of John Tester in Montana. I'm thinking of Sherrod Brown in Ohio. I'm thinking of Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. Let's face it. Have you ever seen an incumbent president where someone of your own party running for the Senate re-election, you're running for the Senate of that party, and you tell the president, don't come to my state? I mean,
I'm busy that day. I'm getting donuts.
If he shows up in Philly, Bob Casey's going to be in Pittsburgh. If he shows up in Cincy, Sherrod Brown's in Cleveland. I mean, they don't want anywhere near him.
So this stuff's changing, Wayne, almost by the hour.
It is. Now, we're going to take a break, and some have to leave us. If you do, please go online to hear the rest of this program, thepublicsquare.com. But when we come back, Dave, you talk about the fact that this debate diminishes the office of the presidency. I want to ask you about that, and we'll do that when we come back in a moment. Continuing with the public square now, our final segment this week, and thanks for listening, by the way. Dave, you recently wrote something that I'm going to read in a moment, but what's the context of writing this?
Well, we're doing a lot of thinking and talking among our trustees and friends and allies about this debate. And the thought that couldn't get out of my head after reflecting on it for several days is, dear God, please spare us from having to do this again. That's where it started from.
Okay, it's called Please Spare Us a Second Debate. Here's what Dave wrote. It took a lifetime for two presidential campaigns to finally break free from the spell cast over televised debates by the Presidential Commission. That entity, born of old-school consultants and media moguls, dominated presidential elections with a medieval flair. The resulting debates devolved into an embarrassing circus of playbooks, planted questions, spin rooms, and shouting matches. To the credit of two presidents, each seeking a second term, Joe Biden and Donald Trump finally agreed on something, which was to tell the commission to go pound salt. The televised debate on June 27th was a restart of the process. It was a pretty basic event, and it worked far better than the commission events of the past. Thank you, Mr. Presidents, both. However, it also uncovered a problem for both campaigns and a deeper challenge for America in the world. The performance of both candidates went past awkward into an area where all the participants lost perspective on just who watches these moments in history. President Biden was clearly not able to navigate the event. This placed President Trump in the unenviable position of debating the shell of Joe Biden, who once was famous for both wit and speed of delivery. Neither man could win this debate because it was set up on the pretense of Mr. Biden being capable, which sadly he was not. Whether this means he is capable to serve as president, run for a second term, or hold office for another 4 years is a decision wholly to be decided by the voters. What America as a nation does not need is a second debate between these two candidates. The world is watching, and so are the economic partners and enemies of this nation. What they saw was a clear invitation to exploit a country that is not able to first protect itself. There's no shame in showing the world the divisions that often attend free people who are struggling with issues. Liberty has always been a messy endeavor argued out loud. A second debate between Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump poses a much greater threat that should be avoided. Both campaigns should end this process now. They should protect the office of the presidency and the commander-in-chief for the good of every American citizen. We have observed both of these men in the office of the presidency. They will make their cases on the campaign trail and through endless media products. They can shout and name-call at rallies all they want, but please, Mr. Presidents both, protect the first principle of human decency, which is common respect. The whole world is watching and making decisions based upon your example. Please don't meet again in a debate format. All of us are in this struggle together. Diminishing the office of the presidency to a watching world is an unnecessary risk we do not need to take to conduct a fair and free election.
So, Wayne, I'm thanking you for reading that, because all I can think of right now is you and I sitting out on Media Row during the Saddleback Forum on the presidency and participating in broadcasting an event where John McCain and Barack Obama squared off, but they did it in a format that enabled the world to hear them both loudly, clearly, and judge without the two of them being in the same room together so that they felt obligated to beat the other person. It's a formula that we have long discussed, we've worked with, we've tried to help other people with. We call the non-debate debate, in which you have a chance to compare and contrast without the temptation of devolving into the gotcha moment that I've got to beat the other person. You let the intelligence of the voters decide. Who knows? Maybe God is trying to help America understand we don't have to put ourselves through this torture. You know, we took a big step. We took a big step in getting into this debate, a big step away from the commission. But maybe if we live long enough, we'll have the opportunity to see it, where we could have a common conversation that people can appreciate.
I think it also highlights, though, our addiction as a country to the two political parties. I mean, you had another event taking place that night where John Stossel was interviewing RFK, and millions of people were tuned in. I'm not sure. I believe he either did it on X or YouTube, I believe, or
I think
something.
it was Rumble and X.
Rumble and X. So it's another way of looking at, part of the problem is why they pushed away the commission, which I'm grateful for. It shows that that's our American addiction, which you've written a book about, to the two parties.
In the non-debate debate formula, bringing someone like RFK in is no big deal.
No, simple.
You just add a little bit more time, you keep things a little tighter, and you can still take a look at 3 candidates. All I know is I'm most fascinated to watch what happens next. If you decide to step in inside either team's strategy playbook, you've got to ask yourself, should there be a September debate? How do we handle that? What's our next step? What do we do next? We're not obligated. This is going to be the next big question. Now, one of the things we wanted just to touch on is as this story is unfolding is the whole question of immunity as well. Because the recent Supreme Court decision, while it's still being reviewed, and I've watched Melanie Elsey, if you just watched her screen pop up and all the folders that just came up, and one of the scariest things you could ever have is Melanie Elsey with a clipboard on the table next to you, and she's probably got 50 pages of paper on that clipboard, and a lot of them actually are blank as well. This is a scary thought. Right? So Melanie's fully engaged. So the whole immunity decision based upon the Supreme Court's action plays into this as well, because the Biden campaign clearly has utilized the prosecutions against President Trump as a part of their campaign strategy. Now it appears that as the immunity questions work their way through each of these cases, it may freeze out a number of them, revise them, maybe even some would have to be abandoned as well. So it changes everything and changes that dynamic. So I think that the Biden campaign is now having to retool at every single level.
But I do think President Trump missed an opportunity at the debate when he was asked by the moderators about putting his political rivals in prison or going after them, when he could have said, if we think about his campaigns from the past, his rallies, they would chant, lock her up in reference to Hillary Clinton. Well, he never went after her or anyone from the Clinton family. His Department of Justice didn't touch any of them.
I don't think before the voting ends up happening, we'll get an honest review from the media in regards to the question of the weaponization of the United States Justice Department in regards to ideas, individuals, and candidates that disagree with the Democrat agenda. This has been a Democrat administration. They have executed their plan in regards to justice. They have weaponized the department against people who are clearly opposed to their agenda. We've never seen anything like it, and it scares a lot of us a great deal. And we've talked about it here on the public square.
Going back to the Supreme Court decision that just came out, and I'm actually glad it came out after the debate, because I think it would have created a level of confusion. So the court determined that criminally prosecuting a president for official conduct, there was a greater threat to just the office and the whole principle of the separation of powers. But what's interesting to me about the decision is because you can't criminally convict a president for official conduct, that means you can't indict him either. They said later in the introductory remarks of the case, in dividing official from unofficial conduct, the courts may not inquire into the president's motives either.
Because you can't read his mind.
Right. So that's part of the weaponization that we've been seeing through the Justice Department, is saying, oh, he meant to do this because he was trying to impact the outcome of an election. So the court's saying, you can't go there, because then you will damage all future president's actions and decision-making processes, because they'll always be worried about what's going to happen if someone misconstrues my motivations or et cetera.
Wayne, you started up saying buckle up. I got to tell you, we've never seen anything like this. If you can find a second seatbelt, that'd be a good time.
Yeah. Don't unbuckle at this point. But thank you for listening, and thank you for supporting the Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.